Welcome back to the Berg podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And following up on last week's episode, we were talking about the core and what makes the core strong. And as we started to wrap up that episode, like each one of us had like this, like, oh, like we should talk about the guys who are doing it right. We should talk about the folks who are really, we've witnessed really contributing lately. And then we didn't. None of us said it because we're like, this could go on for a really long time. So we sort of stopped talking. But I think we wanted to take a moment, a couple of things, but recognize some folks internally who are really stepping up and make sure that we acknowledge the good things that are happening inside of our organization.
Yeah, appreciation. You know, we always joke about the thing about you're supposed to say thank you 52, whatever.
Yeah.
With my father, or that, the appreciation tour or whatever it is. But the reality is that
Two different things. Two very different things.
Two different ways of understanding the same thing.
The Tom Berg, I get appreciated every time the paycheck shows up.
Yep.
Versus the John Gordon, the appreciation walk. You should walk through the office every morning and say thank you.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's the same thing, different. Just completely different understanding how they were raised on it and type of thing.
Yes.
But no, I mean, when we originally started this podcast, we had thought about doing call outs and then, or shout outs or, appreciation things. And then it kind of fell to the wayside because it's just kind of awkward or just a little different thing. But after we had that last conversation, it's like, okay, there's definitely been some things we've seen here just recently that we really wanted to, as the core, we wanted to call out as what they've done, shown true leadership above and beyond the call of whatever, they were supposed to be doing. And so we had a couple people that, just came quick to the top of the mind for one for a safety thing, making sure people were safe. Another one, two other ones just jumped in the ditch. And even though that they're in like a management position, just whatever it took to get the job done. And so I think it was cool that we could kind of follow that up with what we're, really keep going on that same boat and actually making that transition if that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. When I got here at Berg, we were a smaller version of what we are now. And one of the things that was like key to who we were at that point in time was the fact that like we acted bigger than we were. And the only way that was possible was because so many people did such a variety of things, whether it be our foremen, our laborers who did a fair amount of operating, even though they weren't that experienced or didn't have a lot of seat time. And I think we just, as we've grown and we've gone through some shifts in who we are and what we do and things of that nature, I think over the last couple of weeks and months, and we've seen some people really step up and fill some holes and take on multiple things that don't always fall within their quote unquote job description, unless you follow that bottom line that says other duties as assigned, right? Yeah. So I think I agree. I think we are, and we talked about core last time, right? I think at our core, we are still like the right people willing to do what it takes. And we've seen some good examples of that in my own recollection here the last several weeks. Yeah.
And even, one, I'll start sort of, Brian, you had a couple ideas and I don't want to jump on those, but, one of them that simple was, and it's going above and beyond in the sense of doing something. And the timing of it was terrible, right? Like Ford and I were down at Longwood and the guys, I don't care who hears it. It makes no sense to pave this parking lot at the time they're trying to pave it. Construction's not done. It's a bad idea. You're wasting potential work time to move stuff. But it was like 95, 97 degrees. And the guys are all unloading trailers so that they can lift the trailers to put them on a flatbed to move them across the street. And it was one of the most ridiculous things I saw. But I was at the same time really frustrated that our guys were being forced to do this and really proud that our guys would have never said anything to us. Like had we not been there, I would have heard that the stuff got moved. I would have not heard that it was like 105 degrees in the trailers as they had to move them. Like I wouldn't have heard it because the guys just stepped up as a group and just did what was necessary to get it done. And not that it wasn't their job, not that it wasn't their responsibility, it was bad timing and it made no sense. And it's hard to do things that don't make any sense, right? Like it's hard to just do something that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But when the people that are in charge tell you to do it, we're working for them at the end of the day. So fine, we'll do it. But there was no griping, no complaining. For all you hear about, people being upset about this or that, they just went about their day and did the thing that was no fun.
Yeah.
And Jack and Stetson were doing it too. Like they were there with the people doing it. Yeah. Like that's always the key is, walking in the same shoes or whatever we talk about. Like running a track with the windows. Yeah. Well,
not even our company. We're standing there and Bruce, who's running the job, Bruce was brought in from the other side of the country to run this job and does not work for the GC. He works for the GC. He's not an employee of the GC. And Bruce comes over and grabs one of the shovels that we're taking out of the trailer so he can go dig something out because they're trying to get done. Like it was such an idea of, it was just that. It was it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was, these guys are just trying to get done. Like Bruce didn't care. He's all muddy. You know what I mean? Like Bruce's job is to oversee hundreds of people running multiple trades. Bruce is hand digging out a quasite box to get to a valve to make sure somebody didn't break it that had nothing to do with him. Like he could have sat in his air conditioned office and complained about this, but he didn't.
Well, I got another one. It's actually one of my suite mates up there, but Kelsey, she was helping one of our new foremen. Like, they know the work, but they might not know the technology piece. And come by the other day, and she was literally helping them get that up to speed. And so that was again like that's definitely not her normal thing, but like she was just like, hey, this is what needs someone. They need to learn this. I'm going to show it to them. And, those are the little things that like go a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had an estimator, project manager the other day. We had a guy, we were short staffed, and like everybody in construction right now, everyone could use a couple more people. Short staffed, had something that was urgent and important that had to get done. And like, didn't even think twice, jumped in the track hoe and took over. I'm sure it got in the way of things that he was intending to work on, supposed to be working on. I think it was just a leadership move, right? And the same guy 2 or 3 days earlier had to jump into the
water main connection
issue. He's up to his knees in his what would have been his normal office attire to make sure that the crew's getting it done late into the day. And I think that we've got a lot of those stories, but those just happened in like the last 10 days and stuck out to me.
Specifically with like, I have 2 funny things with that, with Dylan, right? Mm-hmm. So the first one is that John's down there and, John's trying to work through, he has an injury that he's trying to work through and be a team player and get the work done as best he can in his current state. And Dylan jumps in this hole and he said, Dan, I got my office boots on, right? So that's construction, right? We have our office boots and we have our work boots.
Sure.
He said, John comes over and I said, well, I got muck boots in the truck. And Dylan's basically says, like, that'd have been nice to know before I jumped in here in my dress boots, and he's like standing, mid calf deep in mud trying to figure out how to fix this. And he called his wife and said, hey, it's going to be a late night. And in the second time, I happened to show up at the site and find out what's going on, that somebody had to go home. And Andrew says, oh, good, you're here to run track hoe. And I was like, well, what happened that you need somebody to run track? And he told me, I said, all right, I can run track hoe. And he said, well, I did tell Dylan. So I called Dylan. He was like, I'm 2 minutes away. He said, I put everything in order. I'm going to jump in the track hoe. And I said, all right, you want to jump in the track hoe? Jump in the track hoe. And I'm pulling out. And Andrew said, hey, I just wanted you to know I appreciate that you guys are willing to like come down and help when something happens and we need help, and in both cases, it's because we just want to get the work done. Like Ford has always established there's not any titles on our cards, because our job is to get it done.
Yeah.
Just let's do this work and do it right. And I sort of, the one I was going to talk about was Brad.
Yeah.
We were shorthanded and Justin was out digging by himself and someone had either called out or something happened and he didn't have a laborer. And so Brad left the job he's already running, which is, outside of it's outside of the job I intended for him to do when we brought him on, right?
Sure.
It would be a piece of what he would do, but not to the level he's having to do it. And he left that job to go be the laborer. Now, I didn't find out about that for probably a week when somebody said something and I was like, wait, why were you there? And he was like, well, I was the laborer. So I didn't even know, and it's one of those things. It's not isolated to our guys. I mean, Gary's been running Dozer or Traco for weeks, because we had an opportunity for a second project to go. It made us, go from being a little bit short to more short. And, and so Gary's in a machine, you know what I mean? And Gary's telling me, it's beating me up, but I job's got to get done. Mm-hmm. And it's that kind of leadership is amazing. And it trickles down, for like, in other words, because the same thing, we saw Phil the other day, and Phil's like he's just an amazing guy because of Phil just goes to work and wants to work. And that's, you never hear boo from Phil. It's, He's just there to work. He's there to do his job, and whatever that job is, not do job A, do whatever the job is. And I was there, and Brad was talking about the closeout, right, at Longwood. And Brad said, who I think the perfect guy would be? Phil. And it's not because Phil has amassed skills that make Brad think, hey, he can do everything we need him to do. It's because Phil just goes to work. He puts his head down. You give him a thing to do. You don't have to give it to him. Phil knows what has to be done. But if somebody puts a list in front of Phil, he's just going to work through. He's not going to complain about it. He's just going to get it done. And that's another example of that. Now, will Phil be the closeout guy? I don't know. We don't know. Who knows? We'll see when we get there. But it's from the completely other side, a guy who he would be working anyway, but we're actually saying, wait a minute, we'd rather you stop doing what you're supposed to do and you go do this other thing because it would help us. Yeah. And he just steps up and does it. It's just, it's crazy to watch everybody do whatever it takes to get done.
And he's also, Phil's currently serving on our safety committee as well. Okay. And he's like the perfect safety advocate because of like his normal routine without even thinking twice about it, we were talking through a site inspection that our safety committee had done. And like Phil had already, like, within the last few days, he had pulled all the chains out to make sure that they weren't stretched or make sure that they were tagged, didn't need to be replaced. Like, he's doing like those little things because he just views it as part of his normal day-to-day responsibility, which is important for him, for the rest of the guys using those things. And
it's so much more credible,
right?
Because on the one sense, who should check the chains better than the person who's going to be standing underneath of the chains?
Sure.
Right? Like, I'd say if Phil says they're safe, they're safe. Because if Phil's wrong, we all have a problem, but Phil's got a big problem.
Right.
And so it lends credibility, but it speaks to everybody, right? Because it shows you how it should be done. Like this is not just lip service. This is real. It's one of those things. A lot of times, I think in certain jobs, safety can be sort of lip service because the danger is so low. You know what I mean? Like Glaxo comes to mind. Like, always wear appropriate footwear. Like, did we see people slip and fall because they wore high heels? Absolutely.
Sure.
But that was like, it had to snow and be icy and we not get it cleared and the timing be bad and you wear the wrong shoes and you not be coordinated enough that you didn't fall. Right? Like 10 things had to go wrong. Like, when you're talking our line of work, you got, a 10,000 pound concrete cinder block sitting over your head with a machine holding it up. Any number of things could go wrong. And one thing goes wrong and you got a problem. You know what I mean? Nothing even happens to the concrete block, but the side caves in. You know what I mean? You can come up with 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do this. It's sort of, I don't know, but it just came in my mind almost, I think it was, I don't know that it's Willie Nelson's song, but the one about don't let your children grow up to be cowboys. Like, it's like an old country song, but it's because it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. Like that, why? Because being that life, it isn't Yellowstone. Like, it isn't a TV show. Like, it's rough. You know what I mean? And that's sort of how our industry is. You know what I mean? Like, it's a rough business. It's hot, it's dusty, it's cold, it's wet, it's muddy. It's at the same, not at the same time, but in any given year, it is both spectrums of terrible conditions. You know what I mean? Like, and this is I said something to Aiden, actually. I shot Aiden an email and I said, hey, he's hitting a few jobs, taking pictures. I said, hey, I think you know this. I said, but I want to say it so you know it. I said, and I don't know that I was trying to like channel what I think really good photography shows. Right. And I said, when you're taking pictures of equipment, I want to see the process. I want to see like dirt flying, right? Like full scoop Monday. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see that. I said, but more important to me is pictures of our team, of our guys. And I said, and for that, I want to see the stress. I want to see that it's hard. You know what I mean? I want to see, because
2 colored shirts.
You know what
sweat.
I mean? Right, you know what I mean? Because I don't know why that sells it, but it does. Like, in other words, it's, you know,
It's just truth.
it's just the
right.
truth. It's that's what it is. And how many times do you play, like we always go back to sports, how many times do you play in a game where you're not sweaty, you're perfectly clean, and you feel good about yourself? You know what I mean?
Right.
That probably means you sat on the bench.
Right.
And didn't have any
Yeah,
involvement.
you were on the sidelines.
You
You
were
had a
on the
nice
sideline.
clipboard. You were rocking a
Yeah,
clipboard.
you got to hold a clipboard. It was great. You know what I mean? Like, you know who had fun? The guy that's got like chunks of dirt stuck in his face mask, you know, and he's bleeding somewhere, is sweaty, you know what I mean, is worn out, you know what I mean, and filthy.
Mm-hmm.
That guy, that was fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that translates to our work. Like, when we have a good day, it's not a clean day. I mean, it's a day where we got to do something. You know, it was interesting. It was challenging. It was fun. That's, you know, it's what Ford misses, right? Like, and sort of that's it. I mean, I think if Ford could somehow figure out a way to like make put a mask on, almost like he wasn't Ford, you know, like, oh, we hired this new guy, and Ford could just
Jason
jump around
Kelce.
the job. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jason Kelce would draw even more attention.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? I'm being
Maybe
serious.
you can wear the dog mask.
Yeah, maybe
there
you
you
just
go.
wear the dog mask.
The
But
Libra
don't-
mask. Put
Yeah.
the Libra.
yeah, Nacho Libre mask over there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in other words, like, if he could do it, that's what he would do. He would just jump around. Where's Ford? Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, because he actually likes that piece of it, and
Sure.
and not just the operating. Like, you know what I mean? It's been a long time, but I always remember a story about the septic broke and you jumped into the septic tank. You know what I mean? Like, it takes an odd person to jump into a septic tank. You know what I mean? It reminds me like Levi when he tried to close off the force mains with his. He's strong,
Right,
but tried to close
right.
off a force main with his bare hands while it was open.
Yeah.
Running. You know what I mean? Like, who does that? But
Yeah.
but we do it.
We do it.
And a lot of people do it, right? It's the, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna call them out, but there's another company that had a billboard and that was it. You know what I mean? Their billboard was like, get dirty. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It was like, do work that matters. That's what it said,
Yeah.
right? But it was like, get dirty. And I was like, who does? You know, we're advertising. You know, like, we have a fitness center available. You know, we have air conditioned this. We have, you know what I mean? There's air hockey tables in the thing. You know what I mean? If I really wanted to. If we could run it the way we want to, I would say, like, who wants to get dirty? Like,
Sure.
who
Yeah.
wants to play in the dirt?
Yeah.
Let's go. And that'd be, you know, and that's what our guys do. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, and I think they look out for each other. You know, you mentioned Andrew, and you mentioned safety, and like, you know, there was an example just the other day. 2 foremen sort of collaborating on what was safe and what wasn't safe, and what needed to be addressed before, you know, the next step should happen to make it safe. And I just thought that was good. I mean, like, you know, our guys, they want to get the work done. They want to go fast. They want to do it right, but you know, not being afraid to sort of call each other out and say like, "Hey, this isn't how it should look," and let's make sure we all go home.
Yeah,
I
and
think
to like, you know, leave everybody out of it, but take
Sure.
the people
Yeah.
that know, right?
Sure.
To take the story like full circle. Like, somebody called me. I was not working. I had off that day.
Yeah.
And I answered because that's what I do. Like, if there's one thing I think I do pretty well, it's answer my phone. Erin would debate that. She says I don't answer when she calls, but that's, but I answered the phone and they told me what was going on. And I was like, all right, well, let me think about it. And they were like, well, what we don't want to do is us hang up the phone and you call them. Right. Cause then like, they just didn't like the optics. And I was like, all right.
Sure.
So I scrolled through real quick from my phone and looked at who was working and who was off. It was a Friday. It's summertime. It happened that a few people were off. And and in my head, I already knew, Dylan and I had talked, and I said, yeah, you can take off Friday. Jolene's going to have the baby soon. He wanted to try and get to the beach for a day with the kids. So that's fine. So I knew he wasn't working. So I was like, all right, I could call JD. It's going to be more. I was like, I'm going to call Scott. So I called Scott and I said, hey, this is what's going on. It's not a big deal because nothing's happened, but they sort of did the right thing, but it's not good enough. We're going to need him to do better. Just for safety's sake, we got to do better. And he was like, all right, I'm not working, but I'll get on it. So now somebody called me. I'm not working.
Yeah.
I answered. I called Scott. He's not working. He answered. Scott calls, I think, JD. JD goes down and looks at it and says to him, like, guys, you know better than this. Like, I get it, but you got to do a little bit better. Right. So it was everybody just doing their job regardless of their job. Like, so to expound on that story of how that happened, like, that's how we got there.
Sure.
And in that particular job, it was the collision of two separate sets of our division, which have the same safety guidelines, but do operate in different venues where there's a little bit of more freedom in special projects, in when they're working on tight sites and when they're doing things, but not when it relates to safety, right? Like they're more of special projects is get it done. Special projects is the thing that Ford built when he was 20 years old. Special projects is everybody's in the ditch. You know what I mean? And you may be the superintendent, the ditch digger, the pipe layer, and jumping in the septic tank all in one day.
Right, same day. Yeah.
You may have to get the billing done by yourself as well. You know what I mean? Like in other words, and that's not a knock on any of them. That's what that division is. So they're just go, go, go. Whereas when you get into commercial or landfill, there's a lot of people watching and there's a lot of steps. So it's not that you're doing it because they're there, but you got to do like you need to have a sign off that you're going to do this, and then somebody else has to approve that, and there's 7 steps. So it was the collision of those two crews, with the one crew saying like we're not even going to be down there, and them saying like, well, we don't buy that you're not going to be down there, but all you got to do is just pull it back a little bit more and you'll be fine.
Sure.
Just pull it back a little bit, but I think in lieu of having that conversation, they just like involved us, but it worked so smoothly. You know what I mean? It was like, and if we don't have this conversation on the podcast, no one knows that someone called me to call Scott to call JD.
Sure.
The only reason they know is because I just said it.
Yeah.
But I want them to feel comfortable to just say it, like to just stand there and say like, whoa, not right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm as guilty as anybody in the past of not saying it, of standing there. I can think of a specific job with a specific foreman who wants to get things done. He is the ringleader of getting it done. And I stood there because I wanted to make sure it didn't get any more unsafe. I knew exactly why he was doing what he was doing. I knew exactly the problem if he chose to make a different choice. And it was safe. But I stood there and watched him do it to make sure it didn't get any more unsafe. And that was the wrong call. Like the right call would have been for me to say like, hey, you know better than this. I realize how much it's going to slow us down. Get everybody out, but I didn't. So it's a big step for our guys to get to that point. But I wanted to hear me say like, we got to get to that point, because while I may not want to slow a job down and I may not want things to go slower, what I definitely don't want to do is call somebody's wife or husband. Like I don't want to make that call. So, so don't make me make the call. Do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you going to tie that to 4th of July, Bry?
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah. I was thinking good examples are people doing good things. I mean, you were talking about some guys being off. So that maybe that's the tie.
Yeah. With it being Independence Day, we had a new guy start yesterday.
Yeah.
And he served in the armed forces. I'm going to leave it at that. He can get into it if he wants to talk about it. He can what he did. But he had a sticker on his truck that I'll get wrong. But it was roughly saying something like when tyranny becomes law, then service becomes duty. I think I nailed it. I think that's it. When tyranny becomes law, then service becomes duty. Duty becomes service, or one or the other. But the gist of it was when things aren't right, you're obligated. It's not just the choice. Now you have to do the right thing. And from that, I'll tie it for you. There's how you tie it. Like that's the safety thing. We're not talking about somebody wearing high heels in the snow.
Sure.
We're talking about somebody getting buried in soil that you're not going to be able to dig them out of. So do the right thing. You're obligated to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't know how that tied it to 4th of July.
Well, because 4th of July, buddy. It was
services.
No, 4th of July, tyranny is what started this, right? Like we didn't.
Tyranny.
You know what I mean? They wanted us to pay taxes. We didn't want to pay. I don't know if they were justified or not, but
sure,
we didn't want to pay them, and we weren't going to pay them. And
perfect.
You know what I mean? And a bunch of people who, the Mike Rowe thing. That's one of my favorite Mike Rowe ones, is when he goes through the story of some of the signers, but he doesn't say who they are, and you don't know the time, and talking about what actually happened to them, how much they put themselves in peril to make the decision. A lot of the people that signed that declaration, they died soon after, and a lot of them died poor, and they weren't poor when they started. Because they were going against the biggest power in the world to say, no, we're not going to do it. We're going to be our own thing, so it's, that's one of my favorite things that he does. Cause he says, I call it, I'm not calling it the 4th of July. It's Independence Day, and I feel like I snapped my fingers and we were here a year ago talking about, it's just hot dogs and hamburgers on the beach for everybody, but it's more than that. Having said that, I'm going to be at the beach. I'm going to have hot dogs and hamburgers. It's going to be awesome.
Celebrating. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is that time of the year, 4th of July. It does feels like sort of like a mile marker when it comes to summer. And
We just got past the summer solstice.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
For summer lovers, it's all downhill from here. You just
I know.
you're just counting the days until fall and school starts again.
Nobody likes it when you say that. I was like, oh yeah, summer, like the long nights, and I'm like, well, they're all getting shorter since yesterday, or last
couple
week.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
That's I don't like my birthday, which is mid-July, because when we had my birthday, it meant that I was halfway and have to go back to school again.
Yeah. My dad always says that about when football starts in football scrimmages.
Yeah.
Like we are seeing football scrimmages. He's like, summer is over. So.
Well, because we were homeschooled, the one thing that I was able to have success on was that, because birthday's in August, was that we wouldn't start school again at least until after my birthday.
Ah.
But same thing, when your birthday happened, it meant that like next day or the next Monday, it was time to start school. But it was like, all right, let's just not start before it. That's the only thing I'm asking, is just not to start before it. That was literally like the
homeschool thing has got to be. It's one of the oddest things to me, because I try and, like, on the one hand, I think like you lose all the social stuff that that I knew to be school. I'm like, but I wouldn't have all these other things. But then I'd have to deal with my mom all the time. So I assume it would have definitely been my mom. Because if it was my dad, it would have been no school. If my dad was responsible, it would have been probably kind of like the Bergs. You got to get your homework done in between when we're cutting down these trees or something. You know what I mean? You would have me digging ditches or something.
Yeah. But no, the fun part about July 4th, and it's, as intriguing as our world is, it's like so interesting how like we live in bubbles, right? And then like the media comes in from like outer space and like says weird things, but like, the pride of being American, the pride of doing what you do. The other night it was funny. So we're in the car, and a car pulls into the parking lot we're in, and they have a little American flag, hanging up off their car. And my daughter's sitting in the back, and she's like, why do they have a flag up? And like I started to kind of explain. She's 3, so, whatever, trying to explain it. But it was just so interesting because of how, like the one thing, I think, broad statement, but our industry is very not political, but just pro getting things done, pro America. Like they're very proud of where they came from and what they're doing across the board. This isn't just us, but this is just everywhere we go and travel to. I mean, you see the equipment, the flags flying on equipment. You see the guys on the shirts with the flags and stuff like that. And anybody can print a shirt with a flag on it, but it seems to hit home more for our industry, because we are like so close to the earth and different things. It's unique versus other places you go and other types of industry. But I don't find a lot of people that do what we do that don't have an appreciation for what we have in this country.
No, and I think that goes back to almost like just a blue collar thing. You know what I mean? Because the thing that strikes me is it's at the core of almost every union emblem is the American flag. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's
blue collar.
It's so core to blue collar, whether it be open shop, union, heavy civil, you know what I mean? Laborers, plumbers, electricians. It doesn't matter. Like, in other words, I think part of it is because nobody gave you anything. Like everything that all of us have, we earned by like sweat and tears. And that's not to say that like, doctors don't earn it. Like they go to school for a long time, right. But it's just, it's a little bit of a different thing. When you're talking about the blue collar community, they like, it's like a badge of honor that they work hard, and what they do, and they take pride in it. And realistically, all the work happens here. Like they are building America. Like every day that we build something, we're building America. You know what I mean? That's the reality, is we're building this country. We're building the infrastructure. We're building housing. We're building, any number of things, and people take pride in it, and I'm proud to work in an industry where that's the way it is. You know what I mean? It's throw the politics out, because nobody wants to talk politics now, but
sure.
Just that pride in where you're from and who you are is something that, really has always been engaging to me. It's interesting to me, and I value it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And Independence Day is sort of like, the emblem of that, right? Yeah. It's the trigger point to what became the American dream, being able to do what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we were in DC a while back for one of the tournaments, and we went to one of the museums, and it has the actual flag, you know, from the Star Spangled Banner, the actual flag itself.
That's cool to see.
Is there. And it was cool to see because, you know, that's sort of like you're tying together so many things, right? Like the fireworks. The girl said to me about, hey, you got to bring a lot of fireworks to the beach.
Yeah.
Like, all right, because one of their friends was injured last year, couldn't be on the beach for 4th of July. So now apparently they get twice as many fireworks as normal. You know, but we have these things that we tie together that it's, but, you know, when they say like it's as American as apple pie, you know what I mean? Like there's 4th of July is just, you know, it's a point of pride for us, you know what I mean? And you know, in its original thing, like they called it the great experiment, you know what I mean? If you could govern yourself, right? Because like at its core, as you think back, like from my background of history, like you got to remember that the idea was so simple. It was just before us, everybody was governed by someone who was in charge by some arbitrary reason or force, one or the other.
Yeah.
This idea that we'd be in charge of ourselves based on electing who would be in charge, even in the current state where we are with, you know, politics being a mess, in my opinion. It's still, we get a choice. Like you're still going to vote. If you're loud enough, we could fix some of the problems. You know what I mean? And if we're quiet, then whose fault is that? Because the people are not appointed; they're elected. You know, and that's something. That's the original thing. You know what I mean? We were the first ones to say, "Hey, what if we just governed ourselves?" And that's interesting. You know what I mean? It was a milestone for government, for people, and it's something I'm still proud of and value. And you know what I mean? I'll say it to anybody who asks me, like, we're still the greatest country in the world, and you can argue why we are or why we aren't, but the opportunity here and the ability to make yourself better purely by your will and your own effort, and the freedom to do what you want, you know, and it takes a lot of people doing a lot of hard jobs to make it that freedom exists and continues and perseveres, and I value it, and you know, so for me it is more than just hamburgers, hot dogs, and fireworks on the beach, but that is the fun part. I don't have to live the other part. I just get to live the fun part.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. A lot of good things going on with our people, and a great time of the year to remember that why we do it, right? So thanks for joining us today, folks. We appreciate that you tuned in, and we hope you come back for another episode.